We're with Teresa Connell, and she's a regression therapist now living in Texas, correct?
Yes, I am, Steve.
Now, originally, when I first contacted you, you were in the San Francisco Bay Area. But by the time I really got to communicating with you, you had moved.
Yes. But that hasn't stopped me to go back because California will and always will be my home.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, we miss you already. Anyway, the reason I wanted to interview you today is because of your work with hypnosis and regression therapy. And let me give you a little background about how I got into it. I've always been interested in this topic for quite a few years. Of course, probably everyone's read Brian
Hmm.
Weiss, and then there's Michael Newton, right? Life Between Lives. Then a little more recently, I got onto a guy named Roger Wolger,
Hmm.
uh, a certified therapist. This I found on the Louise Hay Network.
Hmm.
A woman, she talks quite a bit about healing using past life therapy in her book. But my partner's daughter is also a hypnotist, and she let me borrow these two books.
Right.
Yeah, are you familiar with
Yeah,
these?
those are an easy read.
Yeah,
Not.
right. Anyway, a, a friend of my partner's that she knew many years ago in Palo Alto, her name is Barbara Finn Dyson, and she is referenced in these books. I mean, it's
Okay.
about, I don't know, 10 or 15 hypnotherapists who
Right. I
are,
have those on my shelf, Steve.
you do, good,
Mm.
good. And then a year or so ago, I listened to a show on Coast to Coast, and the fellow there was talking about this book. You see
Okay.
that?
Yes.
Have you heard of this guy?
No, I have not.
A.R. Martin is his name. And he was doing this stuff back in the late 30s and actually communicated with Edgar Casey about it.
Hmm.
So this stuff has been around, but let's talk about how Dolores Cannon got into it. A couple of months ago, I was kind of bored. I was coming back from church, and my wife was buying cat food or something. And up pops on my Kindle reader in the car, Five Lives Remembered
Hmm.
by Dolores Cannon, and that was a suggested book based on my past readings. And so I said, "What the heck?" I downloaded it, and I couldn't put it down. I
Hmm.
mean, it's a fascinating read, and just for the audience, Dolores Cannon is a wonderful pioneer in past life regression and hypnosis, and she got her start in the late 60s, I think around 67, 68, with her husband, and he was actually the hypnotist at the time. And they stumbled into this arena we would call today past life regression. And her book, Five Lives Remembered, is a really good kind of a documentation of that. And it's like a novel almost, but covers five lives of, I think, different people. But I related really to the one. There was a woman who was from downstate Illinois, ended up as the girlfriend of a mobster in
Hmm.
Chicago during the day. I think it was probably the 20s and 30s.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, that got me kind of going. I actually gave a speech about that at my spiritualist church that I attend. And so this topic has really grabbed me. So for the last year or so, I've been looking for the right therapist to work with. Uh, so anyway, I came across you, and it sounds like you've had a good deal of experience with this.
Hmm.
According to your site, you were actually certified as a hypnotherapist back when?
Since 2005.
2005. Now, what kind of studying did you do? It wasn't Dolores Cannon's work, right?
No, it wasn't. There was a local hypnotherapy center run by Lois Prince, and I got my clinical training there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then I went to Santa Fe to the hypnotherapy training academy run by Tim Zimmerman, and that's where I got my past life regression training there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So then
And
somehow you later came across Dolores Cannon
yes, yes,
and
yes.
you got certified with her.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Now, there are a lot of therapists out there, obviously, that do this kind of work relatively, but why do you think the Canon method is better, and why have you settled on that?
Okay. Steve, this is the best question you can ask me because it's taken me since 2005 to answer this question as easy as possible for anybody to understand exactly what I'm going to say. When we are born, you can say that our soul is like a piece of shimmering, silky, see-through fabric. Now, sometimes that fabric has some dark spots on it, and those dark spots and little tears may be from lives prior to the one we were born in.
Mm-hmm.
But also, when we are born giving up our power to our parents. So we have to understand that we live under their house with their rules, their beliefs, their regrets, their fears, their setbacks, and their own addictions and coping skills. So what happens is during that time, our fabric gets tears in it from trauma, from past events that we don't understand why they happened, leaving us feeling more powerless. So what I have found in this work, and anybody else who goes into any other alternative type of therapy, is what we're all really doing is finding somebody to help us mend that fabric that was damaged.
Now, why do you think we would choose? Now, I understand we do choose our parents to some degree before we're born. Why would we choose, say, difficult situations to be born into, such as childhood abuse, sexual abuse, and these kinds of things? What's been your experience in uncovering these reasons?
Well, there's two reasons. One of them is karma. We experience what we have done in the past. So if you go to a past life, like a woman came to me and she says, I don't know what comes over me. I just go in these drinking binges and I just push my family away. I don't understand why I do it. So we took her to a past life where she was just a full-blown alcoholic, and she died an alcoholic and did not achieve anything. So she didn't learn how to love. She didn't learn coping skills. All she knew was how to escape. So whatever happened in her current life between her husband or family, she would get triggered and then go into this binging. And she was so relieved after the session because she realized, oh my gosh, now I have that answer. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just something that I have to change in myself so I don't get triggered and sort of fall off the wagon, you could say.
But what bothers me about all this, I truly believe in reincarnation. A lot of people don't. They find other excuses for reasons that we have for doing what we do. But it's why do we have this veil of forgetfulness? What has been your experience with that?
From what I'm gathering from your question is the veil of forgetfulness it's about change. It's so hard to consciously say, I want to change my life because I'm going to admit that I'm not perfect, even though perfection doesn't exist. It's a big step for anyone to take the courage to say, I have the ability to change my life. I have the ability to go down a different path and learn a way to do something I've never done before, meaning the word mistake. I call school the school of mistakes. Teachers purposefully want us to make mistakes so we learn how to do something a different way. Life teaches us mistakes so we can learn how to do it a different way. So who labels the word mistake to giving us a sense that we're defective? What happened with the meaning of that word that has so much power over us feeling so small when we do something not in the way that it should be done? It's important to change the thinking of the words that create a lot of feelings of devaluing ourselves.
Inadequacy.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not good enough. I don't deserve
I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy. I get a lot of them where they come in, and I've worked with lawyers. I'm not smart enough. Yes, deep down inside, they were they locked in on a moment where their teacher said, "You'll never amount to anything." Or you're never, if you're not going to learn this, you're never going to get smart enough to do this. And then they lock that thought into their mind, and it goes with them for the rest of their life. It's like that.
Then they overachieve.
Overachieve to overcompensate that feeling of inadequacy.
See, that's why I didn't go on for a higher degree. I
Right.
I'm already okay.
Right. So getting back to the reason why I specialize in Dolores Cannon's work is when she added the subconscious mind along with the past life regression in one session, which is usually around 3 to 5 hours, I have seen the most healing done on that visualization I gave you on the piece of fabric. If I go to just a past life, I can make small changes on that soul fabric that make us who we are and what we want to heal. But when I do Dolores Cannon's work, the subconscious does more healing on that in one given time that I have ever noticed any other type of holistic therapy. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
So you did other kinds of hypnosis regression work before Cannon.
I have specialized in past life regression since day one. I have honestly, I can honestly tell you I've never done a stop smoking session. I've never done a weight loss session. When people say, what kind of hypnotist are you? I always let them know I'm a non-traditional. And they go, non-traditional? Hypnosis is non-traditional. I said, no. Hypnosis is weight loss and non-smoking. I'm non-traditional. I look way beyond.
Well, you know, that's interesting because recently I've become interested in hypnosis myself, and I've started working with more of a traditional hypnotherapist, although she's not too traditional.
Right.
And yeah, then I started taking some classes online and everything, and I have no desire to do quit smoking or any of that stuff if I do become
That's the way I look at it.
weight loss, whatever. That's all good stuff, but let's get to the core, right?
Exactly. Let's go to that specific moment in time where you said in your mind, I'm this, therefore I'm going to smoke whenever I feel less than, equal to.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And that's what it's all about. It's all about us consciously raising our self-esteem.
Now, it's interesting because you said you've never done any other kind of modality but regression work. What caused you to want to even consider or to go into this line of work?
Well, that's been something I had to ponder about because I realized it was meant for me. I mean, I put myself out there to want to help others, but what I realized is it was a metaphor of me allowing myself to heal. So what I realized is every client, not every, but in the beginning when I was learning as I went along, most of my clients mimicked whatever it is about myself that I needed to work on. So I literally had a mirror image of myself across the table. And as time went by, it was a wonderful experience for me because then I would go in and I would start to get clients who mirrored me maybe 6 months prior. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you came to me. I know exactly what to do. I know exactly what to say. I was just there. You're only 6 months behind me. You are amazing.
You know, that's really interesting. Years ago when I lived in Chicago, I studied religious science, science of mind, which is sort of like Christian science, but it's more metaphysical. And our teachers used to say almost the same thing. I studied to be a practitioner first before a minister. I didn't go all the way to be minister, but they said when you're trying to be a practitioner, you will attract those with the same or similar issues as you have, so it's a win-win, and they pay
Yes. Right. It definitely has kept me humble.
Well, why don't we talk about a case perhaps that you would like to share that has some meaning that might get a point across or be
Well,
a
actually,
wow moment or whatever.
yes. Well, it's on the same theme of why I went into this. I have two. One of them was the first person that I worked with after I finished my past life regression therapy class. And I said to the universe or to God or whoever you want to call them today, the source, and I said, if I'm meant to do this work, please give me a sign. So I worked with this person who had chronic neck pain for years and years and years. And okay, great. You're next.
I need it.
So I took this client to a past life where she was a he and she was in India. And he was looking afar at this woman whom he loved dearly and just couldn't bring himself to say the words, hi. Literally, hi, you know? And so he was in the sidelines of the community, and then she went off and got married because he never did walk up and say hi to her.
Oh.
So he became a recluse and went out into the woods and found this cave. And in this cave, it wasn't even a large cave. He would lean over and the water would drip, 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 drip on his neck. And he lived there for years and years and years and years and years, and the dampness and the water dripping probably created some sort of arthritis. So after the session, and I thought to myself, wow, this life was very mundane. You know, it was very, very mundane. The soap opera people wouldn't even want to write this one in their script, you know. And so my client called me probably 2 weeks after, and she said to me, oh my gosh, I went hiking and I forgot that I didn't have neck pain.
Wow.
And that was, I think, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and the neck pain never came back. And that was my first client. So that was a sign, and I said, okay, that was a sign for me to continue. And then the next story is the first person that I worked with after I finished Dolores Cannon's session. And it was my mother. And this was a big deal, like, oh, I'm working with my mother, right?
Wow.
She had chronic knee pain, and she's a larger woman, so it makes sense that she would have a lot of weight on her knees. And we were staying in a timeshare in Palm Springs, and it was just after I finished Dolores's class, and it was like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night, and I did the session with my mother. And she was in a very light trance, and I'm like, oh my gosh, God, universal spirit, source, whatever he's called or she's called today, I don't pick. And I said, please show me a sign if this is meant to be. And so she was in a very light trance, and I thought, can this work with someone in a very light trance? And I was really nervous. And when she got off the table, she had a pajama dress on, and she started bouncing up and down like a little baby who was in those little bouncers that just bend their knees like they just found their legs. She started bouncing up and down, and she picked up her jammy dress at her knees like I don't think she had seen her knees in years. And the pain was gone. And that was over 3 years ago, and it's still gone.
That was right away?
Right away. She got off the bed. She had no more knee pain. She was eating Advil like candy prior to the session.
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay, thank you. And you know what I felt? That was the moment when I believed in myself, Steve. I believed in myself enough to say, I can do this and I can give back. And so I work with heart. I work with no ego. I work with unconditional love. I am non-judgmental. And as long as there's a willing client who really wants to change, I've seen miracles happen. But I cannot work with anybody who pays for somebody else to come into my office because they're not willing to change.
what about like children, teenage types, where the parents are willing to pay? Would that work?
I worked with a couple teens, and it would work if they're open to the work. I also have certifications in neuro-linguistic programming. So I use a lot of that with the younger generation because it's very experiential and it's not as daunting for them. And it doesn't take as long. But I love working with the younger generation as well. I love working with everybody.
Now, have you worked with I'm trying to think of here. Um, oh, I forgot what I was going to say.
That's okay.
Oh, here we go. Let's talk about you. Have you ever
Okay.
had your own regression?
Yes, I have. I've had about, I would say, including Dolores's work, probably 10.
Wow.
Yeah, 10. And one of the most thought-provoking moments is when I learned, and this is the same frame with Michael Newton's work, Life Between Lives, is I never really fit in my family. I always felt like an outsider. I used to call myself the black sheep. And I realized afterwards that I have never had a life with any of my family members. So there wasn't really that heart and soul connection with them. And it made so much sense, and it gave me so much relief to know that there was nothing wrong with me.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I feel the same way. I've always felt that way, except for my sister. We get along pretty well. She actually publishes a metaphysical magazine called The Inner Voice, and I helped her start that about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always had that connection. But other than that, I felt like I just jumped into this family and said, give me the first warm bodies that you have available. But, I brought that up with somebody else recently who was a therapist type, and they said, no, absolutely. You plan every iota of your life and, in your family, so forth. So,
Well,
but I agree with you.
right, and I did jump in. One of the sessions, I was in the corner of the room, and I was about 4 years old. And I was looking at this family, the one that I came into that I'd never had a life before. And I looked at this family and I said, yes, I can do this. I'm willing to trade bodies with that little girl and experience what I need to experience. So let me back up why. I chose to live in this family with all these difficulties because prior to that life, I committed suicide.
Mm.
And what I did was I had a father that doted over me and he loved me. He gave me everything and I took him for granted. And we were wealthy and all I would do was snort cocaine and drink alcohol. And I saw myself die at 24. And it was really weird because during the session I could even feel that I didn't have cartilage in my nose anymore. And I've never snorted cocaine in this life. Now I know why. I looked at it and ran the other direction. But I saw my father cry over my grave and say, what did I do wrong? He took my death personal that he failed me. And really, I failed myself. So with me choosing to step in right after I died, it was right in the mid-60s, right after I died, to a father who was indifferent, to a father I never connected with, to a father that no matter what I didn't feel loved by him. What it did was it helped balance the karma for my soul to understand what it felt like and what the father that I took for granted felt like when I realized what I had done to myself and to him.
It's a great example of karma.
It's right, and it's not pretty, but it's true.
It sounds also, if I heard you correctly, that you walked in to an
Yes.
already born little girl who was about 4.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are not aware of the concept of walk-ins. And years ago, do you remember Ruth Montgomery? She
No, I
was
don't.
a big psychic and a writer back in the, I think, 50s and 60s. And my sister and I had a chance to meet her, and we did an interview with her at a conference up in Minneapolis, probably, I don't know, 20 years ago when she was still alive. She was quite old then. But the
Mm.
conference was about walk-ins, and she had written the book.
Okay.
So tell us
I,
about walk-ins.
well, I had read about walk-ins. So it was really interesting that I had a past life where I saw myself as a walk-in. So I thought to myself, all right, well, let me check into this because I don't want to assume everything is real. It's always nice to ask questions and have more validity. So I asked my mother. I says, Mother, did you notice something interesting about me in my early years? And she said, yes. And I said, because there's a possibility that I might have not have been me early on. And then I sort of walked in and she said, I know exactly when you were,
Wow.
exactly when it happened. She said she felt me different. She couldn't put her
Yeah.
finger on it, but I felt different. There was a shift.
She
And she
didn't have a
couldn't put her finger on
context.
it. So
She didn't
yeah,
have the context for it.
right, no, but she knew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
cool.
and that soul that I switched with just could not handle the um the challenges in that family system and wanted to leave.
You did a switch.
I did a switch. And so and then it made sense because someone would say, well, I don't know. How come babies die right away? What are crib deaths? And I said, that's a good question. I really want to find out. And it's on the same vein. You sign
Mhm.
up for everything. You sign up for everything when you go down to Earth because this is the one planet where you can learn so much.
So
Because this is
fast.
the school of hard knocks. And so when these souls are born, all of a
Mhm.
sudden they're going, oh no, everything looks so perfect on the other side. You know, no, 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 I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And then that's when they slip away because they're going, no, 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 I took on too much. I've got to go back. I'm scared. I can't do it. Yeah.
I was just having that conversation about an hour ago with my partner. She took on a lot, and she's well aware of it now. In fact, I think in her case, she was regressed just once by her daughter, the hypnotist, back to the womb. And her father was a chemist and
Mm-hmm.
had tried to abort her using some sort of herbs or chemicals or something. And
Mm-hmm.
she was aware of that. She recalled that whole feeling, and of course, what did that amount to but not being wanted? So that
Yes.
set the tone for the rest of her life.
Sure.
That and other situations in her young childhood. But boy, that's a great explanation. You probably come across that every so often, huh? It's
Lot.
probably not that common, I would think, but it does happen, the walk-in stuff.
No, it's not as common, but what I have noticed is it sounds like your partner, much like myself, and probably most people who are really interested in this work, have signed up two lives in one because they really want to go down the fast track. Like,
Right.
I really want to go down the fast track. I want to just get all this stuff past me.
No, what she compares it to when she signed up to go to college at Santa Barbara. She said, I want to take a lot of hardcore courses, get them out of the way. And the advisor, of course, said, you might want to rethink that. And of
Right,
course, she didn't, and she ended up with low grades.
right, right.
It's the same thing. It's the school of hard knocks, as you say.
It
Really
is.
interesting.
It
Oh, what
is.
else can we talk about? Well, let's talk about the method a little bit. I don't know much about Dolores Cannon's methodology, except you go into a trance and then boom, how do you get into a past life versus, let's say, an experience in the womb or childhood or something like that, which a lot of these therapists get into. They don't even consider past lives, right? They consider anything from birth on forward and not even in the womb. So
Right.
let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, what's wonderful about Dolores's wording is she wait. What's wonderful about Dolores and her wording is you go back to a time that's most appropriate for you. So we don't lead the witness with the words.
Okay.
So we could go to a past life, we can go to an earlier life in the present life, and your subconscious will take you to the most perfect time that is right for whatever it is you're seeking at that particular time. So it's open-ended. With the other colleagues, they'll say, let's go back to a past life, or let's go back to a future life, or let's go back to a life between lives.
But you don't do that.
So it's all in the wording. It's all in the wording. When anybody is in a trance state, the wording is very, very essential.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very important to keep it vague so your client really does all the work.
Let's talk a little bit about between lives. You probably had some experiences with that.
Yes.
In Dolores's book, The 5 Lives Remembered, at one point her client kept going to in between lives, and then from there they learned that they could have her project forward into the future and sort of predict what might be happening in their own lives in the future, not even the client's life, but their lives. I thought that was pretty interesting, and that's the same technique she used in her research with Nostradamus. I need to say, Dolores Cannon was in this house in probably around 1998, 99, and when I had the radio show here, we did it out of the house, and she showed up here one day, and we were talking about that whole experience of Nostradamus.
Very cool.
So I forgot to mention that in the intro.
That's all right.
So I have met her. But talk about that a little bit. Have you had any cases like that?
Yes, when I work with clients, this is prior to Dolores Cannon's work, because I haven't yet found anybody to go into the future with Dolores Cannon's work, because when they want to have questions answered and want to heal that fabric, like I mentioned, heal those areas in that fabric, it's in the earlier life of a present life or a past life. But when I was specializing in only past life regression before I stumbled onto Dolores Cannon's work by a friend who told me about her, I found that when I took anybody to a future life, they sounded very robotic. They had no emotion. Everything was just cut and dry. It was very interesting. Even their mannerisms were very, just because it hadn't really happened yet in that frame of mind. Yeah.
But maybe we don't want to reincarnate into that time frame, 1,000 years from now or whenever that would be.
Right, right.
And
well,
maybe we do.
Well, here's another interesting point of view that I found with the work that I've done is I did a past life regression with a colleague of mine. And all of a sudden, she went to a time in another state in the present life that she was living. Like Michael Newton's work, we got to meet the other individual that she was sharing a body with, a young girl in Idaho who had just saw a ship crash in Idaho, and it was an alien type craft, and that was in this life.
So this was one soul who was in two bodies.
Yes.
In two different states.
Yes. So it was a current year. It was very interesting. It was very interesting.
You know, Dick Sutphin, years ago, he's written, I don't know how many dozen books on metaphysics and used to take people to Sedona. And he actually talked about that particular phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know he had somebody he had regressed. And it was a housewife, and she was living two lives in two different places. It sounds wacky when you've never heard about it before. But...
Oh, yeah. As soon as I finished Dolores Cannon's second class, her part 2 class, I worked with an individual who also had finished her class. And he gave me a Dolores Cannon session. And what was pretty amazing is I got to see my other soul wait, let me start again. What amazed me is I am also sharing my body, my soul, in another current form as an alien. And I was in this little tiny ship, and I was, you can call myself an alien geologist.
Yeah.
And I was looking down at the coast of, say, California, Oregon, Washington, all the way up through Alaska. And I was using the sonar in my ship, sonar, to look below the sea, below, like I could see the crust.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed is what I was shown, which is very profound, and you don't have to include this if you don't want, but I'm going to share it anyway because it was very profound. What I noticed is with all the oil that was extracted from those areas along that plate boundary, I was shown that plate boundary leading up all the way, even curving through Alaska. I was shown that that was like a human spine. So what happened is with the oil being extracted, in those areas, it was taking out the lubrication, so it was removing the discs from the spine, okay?
Let me guess. It's setting up the stage for a future earthquake.
Right, because what happens when bone crashes against bone? It's brittle, it breaks, and that's what I got in that session. So the sessions I'm getting now, if anyone were to do work with me, and a few people that I've come across that I'm doing work now, I'm getting information about the upcoming earth changes. What we need to know is to not be afraid of what we don't know. In other words, be open. You can ask questions without judgment. And that's interesting because what I found is to come here and to be human is we live in the laws of duality, black or white. I'm nice, he's mean, I love you, I hate you, this is sweet, this is sour. And we spend the rest of our lives trying to find the middle ground. And so what I have realized is my role is finding the balance, finding the neutrality. And that's what Dolores Cannon's work does, is you go back in time to a place where you experience trauma beyond compare that created a rip in your soul fabric. And you go back in that time, not to pretend it never existed, but to just neutralize the event. Because you don't want to forget that it happened because you learned so much. But what you want to know is you have the ability to neutralize the event and not let it trigger you anymore. And that's the start of growth.
So you can just be the observer, impartially observing all your past experiences and then move on.
Right, because when you get triggered, really what you're hearing is, uh-oh, this is about me. And it's about those feelings that we talked about early. When you get triggered, you go back to feeling not good enough, not loved enough, not smart enough, not this, not that. So it triggers that negative self-talk inside you. So when you neutralize it, then you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, I'm not the one that was defective. It's them. They are stuck. And they're passing their beliefs that are outdated onto me, and I thought it was my fault. So if there is some food for wisdom, this is my food for wisdom to share right now, because this is what I'm getting right now. It's important to eat nutritious foods. It's important to take enzymes so you get the most nutrition from your food, because that's going to keep your body in very good health and your immune system strong. You've got to stay away from the genetically modified foods. And eating raw is very, very important because it lightens your vibration. And if you want to evolve and do the fast track of evolving, then it's important to incorporate a lighter diet, a less dense diet. And Dolores Cannon has gone over this, no more meats. And eventually you're going to just drink your life away, and then eventually you end up with water, but it's step by step. So first step is let go of the meat, and then maybe eat protein that's smaller than you,
Mm-hmm.
like chickens.
Mm-hmm. Some years ago when I had the radio shows, I interviewed two breatharians.
Cool.
Yeah, one is Wiley
That's very cool.
Brooks. I think he may still live on the coast out here.
Hey,
He was in the house too.
wow.
And the other one is an Australian woman, Jazz Muheen, that's her name. She's quite well known over the world. Yeah, breatharian. People don't
Very
believe it, but from what you're saying, it's eventually possible if you want to go that route. I want to thank you for really taking a chance to be on this interview today. This
Well, I
is
want to thank you for choosing me. I feel it's an honor to work with you.
It's been really enlightening to me, and I got a lot more than I thought I would.
Sorry.
No, that's great. I love it.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you.
All right, thank you.